Today's project is to get this old Riccar sewing machine stitching properly. It's a thrift store find. There's nothing broken on it. It's basically okay. And it is stitching. Straight stitch is fine. Zigzag, not so much. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. That makes this the perfect time to demonstrate the troubleshooting process for poor stitching on sewing machines. First, we check the needle. Not only should it be in good condition, no burrs, no rust, etc., it should be the right needle. This one wasn't. The one on the left was in the machine. The one on the right is what should be in the machine. You also need to make certain the correct bobbins and bobbin casings are in use. A casing that came from a similar machine may look very, very much alike and yet not work well in actual fact. Most home sewing machines use Class 15 or Class L bobbins. While those are very similar, and some machines will put up with you swapping one to the other, it doesn't always work, so make sure you have the correct one. To avoid the necessity of trial and error, go online and look for a chart for your model and make of machine. If with the correct needle in good shape, the correct bobbin and the correct casing, it's not stitching well, we go underneath, as I'm doing now, and look for fuzz and clean and oil it. These little bits of fuzz don't look like much. This one's not filthy, and yet it is enough to throw off the tolerances of the machine because they're very narrow. Your cleaning solution needs to be safe for all the materials on the particular machine you are working on. I'm using LPS1. It'll show up later in the movie. So everywhere that you find tiny bits of crud, and there is some in there, it's just hard to see on camera, you need to get them out. If you have a spare seam ripper, it actually is a good tool for probing and scraping out the hardened fuzz. You've seen me do that in a few places already. Reassembling this area isn't difficult, but you don't get a good look at it, so let's go over it here. Here I'm putting it back together in the correct order, and everything clicks firmly into place. It shouldn't feel wobbly, and you should feel a positive closure as things pop into spots. So now let's try zigzagging again, and it is working, but when I examine the sample, the stitching does look a little bit loose. That could be just because I'm working on paper so you can see it well. So let's try it again on a fabric scrap. No, it genuinely is sometimes too loose down there. I've made it very easy to see whether the needle is messing up or the bobbin is messing up by using two different colors. And clearly it's the bobbin thread that's not feeding evenly. And here's why. When you hold the bobbin in its casing by the thread, it should reel out of the bobbin. In other words, the thread should allow the casing to drop, but it should do so slowly. It shouldn't plummet to the ground as mine just did. So I got inside, taking this spring off of the casing, and found a piece of fuzz. There it is on the tip of the seam ripper. That is definitely enough to disrupt the adjustment of the spring that regulates the thread tension for the bobbin, so it has to go. I've also located a little bit of rust or corrosion and some small bits of impacted fuzz that gets very, very hard and dense that I'm scrubbing off from the inside of the spring as well as from the outside of the casing where the spring overlaps it. And now we're ready to put it back on and see how that does. But I have a confession to make. I took the spring off another bobbin casing because I dropped mine while I was disassembling it. And I was having trouble getting it back on when I realized that's because, similar as they are, they didn't fit. That one fits. That's just how it should go. The first one didn't align properly. Yet another example of the fact that similar bobbin casings may not be identical. So let's review what we've done. The bobbin casing needed both corrosion and a fuzz ball cleaned out from inside it. We needed the right needle. We needed to clean out from the feed dog and bobbin area. This is nearly correct now, but that screw needs to be a little bit tighter. Aha. Now I have to kind of shake it to make it drop. That's exactly right. Slight jiggling should do it. Now let's go over a few things that could happen, though they didn't happen to me. The casing on the left, now on the right, has some rust on it. That could be a problem. All of these bobbins will fit the same casing, but the one on the upper left is the one in good condition. The clear one on the lower right is not really a true fit. You may get by with it, and then again you may not. The one on the upper right and lower left both have some rust and some distortion and can cause problems because they may not rotate smoothly within the casing. It is very hard to spot any debris that might be stuck inside this piece of casing. I did have some. You might have more. Ditto for this part of the housing. And look under there. That's the feed dogs from the bottom where you can't see. I did have debris. That is from the machine I just cleaned. Feed dogs really catch it, and you really have to work at seeing it and digging it out from under with this area disassembled. Usually you need to spray with your cleaning solution, rub it with a brush, poke at it with your probe, and repeat, and repeat, and repeat. It is impossible to get a good look at the area without turning the machine upside down or on its side. But now you can see the whole area is nice and clean and you can see right through it. And this is what came out of it, enough to cause issues for sure. It's also important to make certain the bobbin's correctly loaded in its case. This one is. The next picture is not. That thread is not going to feed through the tensioner, and it can pop out like that. Here it is replaced. Also assure yourself that the bobbin has clicked firmly into its casing. It's very easy to get it not quite seated securely. Here's a good look at the bobbin casing that consists of 3 pieces. The bobbins in the main housing, then the screw, then the spring on the right. Of course, correct threading is critical. I didn't have a diagram, so I had to experiment based on long experience, and this is what turned out to be correct for this machine. It's always going to be similar. Sometimes you can find a threading diagram online. On the left of the picture, you can see the cleaning product I use. It's called LPS food grade lubricant. That doesn't mean it's edible. It means it's safe for use on food production equipment. It also happens to be safe for all the materials utilized in most sewing machines. I fiddled with the tension a little and got these 3 lines of stitching going from okay to excellent, starting at the top and finishing with the one at the red pointer on the bottom. On the top 2, you'll note occasionally an overly loose little white spot. Here are the 3 lines of stitching from the bottoms, or the bobbin side, and you can clearly see what was going on. Occasional jerking of the bobbin making those stitches too loose. So this machine is ready to get back to work. I hope you have as much success with your next machine project.